Well, as we are preparing for the holiday season, guys, it's upon us. Next week is Thanksgiving. And so I thought it would be so fabulous to talk about Advent, to talk about how are we doing? What are we doing to prepare ourselves? Not just what kind of cookies are we going to make or what meal are we having or who are we getting together with, but how are we preparing our hearts for this season? So today I'm having a conversation with Jen Ludwig, and it's all about how to prepare yourself for this season of Advent. Hi, friend. You're listening to Find Hope Here. I'm your host, Teresa Whiting, author, speaker, ministry leader, friend, and fellow struggler. This is a podcast about the messy, complicated, painful parts of life, but also the beautiful, joy-filled hope that Jesus promises. Each week, we dig deep into God's Word together and talk about how His truth impacts our everyday lives. I'm not going to ask you to sit with me and have coffee because I seem to have my best conversations while I'm just doing life. So I'd love to hang out with you as you walk or fold laundry or drive to work. You're invited to join me in pursuing the hope God promises. No matter where you are or where you've been, I pray you always find hope here. Let's jump into today's episode. Welcome, friends. I'm excited to introduce you to Jen Ludwig today. Jen is a Jesus follower, a worship leader, and songwriter. And after attending Pepperdine University and finishing her graduate studies at UCLA, she settled in Southern California, where she currently lives with her husband. Jen, welcome. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about yourself before we get started.
Yeah. Well, personally, I'm in a new season of life. My youngest just left for college a few months ago, so I am an empty nester.
I
So
know
that
that season.
that is very much part of who I am and where I'm at right now. But as you mentioned, I am a writer and I'm also a worship leader, and I love Christmas. And
Mm,
so, for the last 2 decades, probably, I have spent time singing about Christmas and writing about Christmas and talking about Christmas to anyone who wants to listen. In particular, I am passionate about keeping our focus on Jesus.
mm,
Uh, it is such a busy time of year. We can get really caught up in all of the doings and the
yes.
happening around Christmas and in those weeks of preparation. And especially, now I'm coming into a new season, but especially when I had young kids in the house, there was just always so much going on and good things, really good things
Mm-hmm,
going on,
mm-hmm.
but tended to leave me questioning on December 26th, like, what happened?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I just love talking more about that and talking about the opportunities the Advent season offers.
Yes. And you wrote this book, which I have right here. I'm showing it because it's so
Oh,
beautiful.
yay. Oh, thank
And
you.
it's called Embracing Advent, Rediscovering Christmas in the Chaos. I love that because I feel like this season very easily dissolves into chaos.
Yeah,
Um, whether you have kids, whether you don't have kids, it's like there's always some reason that there's chaos going on. So,
absolutely.
yeah. So why did you write this book? What was the impetus?
Yes. So I would say that the impetus was creating an invitation for people to slow down
Mm,
um, and refocus on Jesus as we're preparing for Christmas. Um, I was tired of feeling that I had missed it. And I knew that I had friends and lots of other people that felt the same way. So, more of a deep dive on that. Um, I would say it was, oh, maybe 15 years. It was around 2008. And I remember sitting in a church service and they showed a video that was done by an organization called the Advent Conspiracy. Basically, it was a reminder that in the busyness of the season, not to lose focus. And instead, focus they offered was to worship fully, spend less, give more, which didn't actually involve finances, and to love all. And
Hmm.
so I remember seeing that video at that time and thinking, yeah, that sounds pretty right on to me. That sounds like where and how I should be spending my
Right.
that year. My kids were really little at the time, so maybe 2, 3, 4, and I decided to write them songs as Christmas gifts that year. And I did
Oh,
that for the two of them, and I also did it for my nieces and nephews. And it was really a beautiful time to think about and pray over each of those kids as I was preparing to give them Christmas gifts.
mm,
So fast forward all the way to 2020, and we have COVID, which is truly the impetus for writing the book. I have
hmm.
a lot of time on my hands.
Right, right.
So in 2020, I went back to a lot of those notes and wrote an Advent devotional.
I love that gift that you gave of writing songs. I just think that's so beautiful and so much more meaningful than a Amazon gift card. For the listeners who maybe aren't familiar with
Yeah.
Advent or think, oh, Advent is like the calendar with the chocolates, right?
Uh-huh.
Can you explain what is Advent? Why do we celebrate it? Um, just give us an overview.
So Advent is basically the season that leads up to Christmas. And a lot of people are familiar with Advent calendars. When I was a kid, I actually grew up going to the Catholic Church. And I remember every year I'd get an Advent calendar, which was basically some snowy scene or manger scene. And you'd open up little paper windows, and there would be either a Bible verse or a part of the Christmas story behind each window.
Mm-hmm.
I think that used to be something you only saw in the church or in liturgical churches, but the idea of an Advent calendar is everywhere now, right? You can go to Target and get one with socks in it. You can go to Sephora and get one with makeup in it. Every year I still get one from Trader Joe's with chocolate in it. Uh,
Mm.
but it's really just like if anyone is familiar with Advent or Advent calendars, it's probably just in this idea of it being a countdown to Christmas, 25
Mm-hmm.
windows starting December 1st and going through the month. Um, Advent, though, in the liturgical church calendar, it doesn't always start December 1st. It is the 4 weeks leading up to Christmas. So it always starts the fourth Sunday before Christmas. If you celebrate it in the church setting, like it might be mentioned in your church. And those 4 weeks are focused on four themes as we move toward Christmas. And those themes are hope, peace, joy, and love. And I like to think of those as four gifts that we receive, and
Mm.
gifts that are given to us, and that gifts that also can be given through us to others. Yeah, Advent as a whole, I would just say to know that it means coming, and we are celebrating Jesus coming into the world then, now, and one day again.
And right now, in the climate that we're living in, what better gifts can we receive, really and truly? I mean, we are desperate for
Yes.
hope and peace and joy and love. I mean, just that's what I want. I want that more than a gift, than anything else, than the chaos and the Christmas cookies and
Yeah.
all of that. It's such a beautiful way to refocus.
Those gifts, hope and peace and joy and love, are the only gifts of permanence.
Mm.
Like you mentioned an Amazon gift card. Well, that's great. And you buy something with it, and that's great. And then it gets like donated 2 years later
Yep.
when you're done with it,
Yes.
right? Um,
Yes.
but those are gifts that are ongoing.
And it
Yeah.
sounds so wonderful. So I want us to talk about how can we be intentional about this?
Mm,
Give us ideas on how to make it happen.
yeah. So ultimately for me, like to boil it to the one thing, it is making time to sit at Jesus's feet. And I often come back to the story of Mary and Martha. I am a Martha. I am a planner. I am a doer. So this story speaks to me. I'm sure a lot of listeners know it, but I'd love to share the paraphrase from the Phillips translation because
Ooh,
I just love how it's written.
let's hear
So
it.
this is Luke chapter 10, verses 38 to 42. Jesus came to a village, and a woman called Martha welcomed him to her house. She had a sister by the name of Mary who settled down at the Lord's feet and was listening to what he said. But Martha was very worried about her elaborate preparations. And she burst in saying, Lord, don't you mind that my sister has left me to do everything by myself? Tell her to get up and help me. But the Lord answered her, Martha, my dear, you are worried and bothered about providing so many things. Only a few things are really needed, perhaps only one. Mary has chosen the best part, and you must not tear it away from her. And I think this passage is so perfect for Christmas because so much of our attention and time gets pulled into parties and hospitality.
Yes.
And Jesus comes to Martha and Mary's house, and these sisters have an incredible opportunity to spend time with Jesus. But Martha gets caught up in her elaborate preparations. And again, I do not fault the woman because I am with her. Jesus is in your home. You want to make it amazing, right? You
Right,
want them to be
right.
comfortable. You want your guests to be comfortable. You want to provide everything that they will need to make this special. But in doing that, you overlook that what makes this special is Jesus and his presence there. And I just think that happens to us too. We get so excited for Christmas and so excited for all the things that make it special. And again, I am not knocking those things. And I think that a lot of them are really important parts of the Christmas season. But we can get so busy that in the effort to make it all perfect, we miss out on the best part. And so my number one priority during the Advent season is to make time like Mary just to sit at Jesus's feet.
Hmm. Yes,
So,
yes.
practically speaking, I highly, highly recommend finding a comfy spot where you are going to sit each day and spend a little time with Jesus.
Mm,
I have a chair in my living room. I especially love at Christmas because it's right next to the tree.
yep.
It's also being specific about that and deciding now what that might look like. And we're in November, so there is still time to do that, right? There's still
Yes,
time to think
yes.
about when are we going to do that every day and how are we going to do that every day? Because I believe all scripture is God breathed, and you can pop up in your Bible anytime and flip to a page, and the Lord will have something to you, and that is beneficial to you. And particularly in busy seasons, it's probably better to have a plan and
Mm,
not just be like, I'm going to get to that sometime today and just look,
right.
right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think choosing the when, my personality, the beginning of the day is really the best time of day for me. It's how I want to start my day. There are others that are more night people, perhaps more of a prayer of examine and like looking back at your day and seeing where God moved and then taking that on board and thinking how that'll affect tomorrow.
Right.
A
Right.
good win for you. Or if you are working, maybe it's a lunch break. Maybe I'm going to take a walk at lunch every day and I'm going to touch base with Jesus. But choosing the when and choosing that now, and then also choosing a how you're going to spend that time. I think that structure is fantastic. So whether you choose a Bible reading plan or a Bible study or a devotional, any of those can just be really helpful in creating and keeping that habit. A Bible reading plan. Oh, yes, thank you.
Or
For
a book
the book.
like
Yes,
Embracing Advent and then
yes, yes.
following along with that. So your book encourages us to embrace the four themes of Advent. And I'd love to just dive into, at least start diving into some of those themes.
Mhm.
And the first one is hope. So, how does Advent in particular bring hope to us? Which hope is a theme obviously very dear to my heart. Uh,
Yeah. Yes. Hope is that first theme of Advent. And I think that it is very deliberate because it's a really important starting point for preparing our hearts for Christmas. One of the words for hope in the Bible in Hebrew is kavah, and it literally means to wait for. It's this idea
Mm,
of waiting. So, like in Isaiah 40, where it says, those that wait on the Lord will renew their strength. Some translations, those that hope in the Lord will renew their strength.
mm,
And I think that this place of waiting is meant to be our posture as we're coming toward Christmas, as we're getting ready to celebrate. It's like we are waiting again for Jesus's coming. We are waiting to celebrate his birthday from when he came. We are waiting for the day he will come again, but we're also like waiting and looking for the ways that he's moving in our lives and that he wants to speak to us today. And so in liturgical churches, you'll see them lean into this a little more heavily. You'll get this real sense of waiting, of longing, of darkness before light, before
mm.
Christ comes into the world. But hope is also about confidence. We are hopeful about something because we are confident something good is coming. And the reason in our Christian lives that we have that hope and that confidence is because Jesus already came. So it's also this looking back. Um, the Israelites had been longing for centuries for the Messiah to come. And then he came. And so we can look back and be like, oh, that promise was fulfilled. So we can look forward with hope, knowing that one day there's going to be future restoration and full
Yes.
restoration. And in the meantime, we can also be confident that we have hope in this life because we have the Holy Spirit who is working in our lives, who is transforming us daily if we allow him to. And so this starting point of hope, this starting point of waiting, this posture of anticipation
Mm.
is a really fruitful place to be spending our weeks, and especially that first week as we're looking toward celebrating on Christmas
Yes.
Day.
Yes. Well, there are three more. There's peace and joy and love. And we may or may not get to those. And if we don't, that's okay because people can grab your book and they can embrace Advent and they can go through each one of those. But what I didn't want to miss was I want you to talk specifically about even some more practical ideas. You've given some really
Yeah,
beautiful thoughts about having a time and a place, but we all know as good as our intentions may be, the time gets crazy. So I would love if you would share, just some more strategies,
yeah.
maybe practical ideas.
Mhm.
You're a planner. So give us your plans for how we can truly embrace this season.
Yeah. So yeah, it's funny. I always think about Advent as a time of preparation, but also think that the best Advent seasons have some preparation before Advent.
Hmm.
Because
Preparing to be
because
prepared.
it's truly, I mean, this Thanksgiving to Christmas Day can go by so quickly if we are not mindful of how we're going to spend that time before we get there.
And
So go ahead.
this year, what day does Advent start?
Yes. Okay. So actually, it does start December 1st this year. It is Sunday, December 1st, right after
Okay.
Thanksgiving.
Okay. So, and
Not
today,
often.
when this episode drops, we're at November 19th, I believe, which means
Okay.
we haven't even hit Thanksgiving yet. So this is a perfect
Yeah.
time to start the preparation for the preparation.
Yes. Yes. So the first thing I would invite listeners to do is leave space in your calendar. And I think that has to be very intentional. I know we're talking about being intentional with things this season, right?
Hmm. Yes.
So I often start with a brain dump, and that is literally just putting everything to paper, what I have to do, what I think I'd like to do. This is not just about me. It also has to do with probably immediate family and extended family, what expectations are. And you put it all down on a piece of paper. I did this with girlfriends for the first time, maybe 5 years ago or so. And the first thing that I think will amaze you, if you will take the like 3 minutes to just scribble it all down is how many things you've written on that piece of paper. And you will realize how impossible it really is.
Mm-hmm.
But if we
Mm-hmm.
don't do that, it's amazing. We just keep putting things on the calendar and everything important gets squeezed out. So I would say, dump it all on a piece of paper. And then I try to circle the top three things, like what are the really important things to me? And then just viciously cross out what is
Mm.
not important. Um, and then build your calendar. And when you do build that calendar, make sure there's still some extra space to breathe because you never know what is going to come up, who
Right.
might need you in that time due to illness or emergency or what other opportunity might come up that you want to have space for. So there's this idea of just planning purposefully, thinking about that. And as I say that as well, when you're looking at that list, I was encouraged at one point to just think about how many things and traditions are we doing just for tradition's sake? And I'm a huge tradition person, and I could do a whole separate podcast about how important I think traditions are in creating memory and reminding us to come back to certain values. But at the same time, I found myself at one point when my kids were teenagers still like doing the Advent calendar where we stuffed in the little Bible verses to read every day. And I'm like, they may be getting a little old for this version of our tradition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would say as far as a tip is to plan purposefully, look at the calendar now and make some decisions of things that you really want to do and things that you can let go of. The second practical suggestion I would have is to give joyfully. It's really ironic to me that such a key part of Christmas for so many people is this idea of joyfully giving, but it ends up actually being a joy robber. And
Mm.
that is largely, I think, because of the financial stress that it can put on people, but also even just the stress to get the perfect gift or the right gift for someone. So I'm going to give two suggestions in this area that are just things that I do, take them or leave them. But two of the things that have helped me is, well, first of all, starting with prayer. If you just start by writing down the names of everybody you think you are going to be giving gifts to this year and just pray over each person,
Mm.
you have gifted them, right? That's not something you handed them, but you have gifted them. But also then just being prayerful as you pray for each person is like, hey, God, like what might they need or what would support them or what is the gift you're calling me to give them? And that sounds like a lot. And I'm not saying that God in audible voice goes like, your niece could really use a blue sweater,
Right.
but being prayerful about it. And then to those two practical suggestions, one thing our family does is for our extended family, we actually give everyone the same gift. So when we get together on the 25th, it is a pretty big celebration in our family because we have in-laws, parents on both sides of
Mm-hmm.
the family and grandparents. And so our family, meaning my husband and I and our two children, the four of us try to brainstorm like what's the one thing we're going to give this year that has meaning to us and would hopefully be a blessing or meaningful to the receiver. So, and these are not big things, but for example, last year my daughter is at a school that has a lot of agriculture studies, and so they have like a working farm, and so we got everyone honey from the working farm and
Ooh.
gave everyone jars of honey. And then at the same time did donation gifts to Samaritan's Purse that gives bees to various communities so that they
Oh,
can
I
create these
love
businesses.
that.
So like we've done before like water pitchers and digging water wells, things like that.
Oh, oh my
So
goodness.
it's a really fun thing though, because there is a thoughtfulness in it, but just once.
Right.
And then it's
That is
like
brilliant.
that
It's so
covers
brilliant.
maybe 12 people or 12 families. And now like caveat, when kids were younger, we still gave kids toys and things, but I'm talking about for the adults. And it's always fun for us to say too, like, here's why we picked this,
Mm-hmm.
this is why this is meaningful to us. And, I hope when you use the picture, you're reminded that you contributed to bringing water to people who didn't have it. So,
Oh my goodness. I love this idea. I
so
love it so much.
but it is another thing to be prayerful about. But again, it practically you're being prayerful about one thing and
Yes.
then spreading that love around. And then the other one, going back to the beginning of our conversation when I was talking about the Advent conspiracy and the idea of spending less but giving more, is giving the gift of time. And that can look, well, gosh, that can look however the Lord leads it. But one way to think about that is, if you have a talent, if you are a musician or a sportsman or a gardener, you can give the gift of that to a friend or to a relative in the sense of like, Aunt Etna is going to give little Susie piano lessons this year. And what a gift to little Susie's parents and to Susie
Right.
and Aunt Edna. And by the way, how relational, because now they're going to spend time together all year next year. Um, so that is just something that I think is maybe overlooked. And I think that's a little sad that, as far as secular Christmas is, there's an expectation for something in a box. Uh,
Mm.
but I think that along those lines, often we will give outings for later in the year
Mm-hmm.
at Christmas. Um, I also find that super practical because I am a December birthday. My daughter is actually an Epiphany baby. She is January 6th. And there's just a lot of stuff at
Yes.
Christmas time. And it's really fun to 3 months later or 6 months later go out to high tea somewhere or visit a museum that you wouldn't have normally gone to or have some other experience or a nice dinner out with someone um, down the line. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just think that practically speaking, that is cost effective because it moves the financial output to a different time of year versus everything being in December. It
Yeah.
has that relationship building aspect to it. And also it is just, I think it's thoughtful to think
Yeah.
about
I
what
mean,
someone
as
might
you're doing
enjoy.
this, I'm getting these ideas of like, oh my goodness, wouldn't it be so fun to do like one of those painting classes or a pottery
Yes,
class together? Like, hey, we're gonna
yes,
make a night of it, or we're gonna do 3 sessions together where you're building like you're building memories,
yes.
you're giving a gift, you're spending time. I keep it coming. Keep it
Yep.
coming, Jen.
Well, those were the practical, particularly on the gift giving side. I would like to revisit this idea of our quiet time. And I'd say another practical suggestion for that, we talked a little bit about, making a habit of the when and finding a how, like what you're going to do. But I'd also just encourage creating a space for that daily devotional, a very particular where like a space that you return to. I kind of talked about my cozy chair in the corner next to the
Mm-hmm.
Christmas tree. Um, Maybe you splurge on a candle. And when you sit down in the morning or you sit down in the evening, you light that candle just before you come to your time with Jesus. Or maybe you keep a cuddly blanket next to your Bible, and that's what you kind of pull over your legs as you sit down. Or maybe you treat yourself to a coffee before that walk around the neighborhood or that walk around the office. But the reason I bring that up is um, there is something physical about having a habit of place that cues our bodies
Mm-hmm.
to what we're doing. It's like part of the habit creation. And so the first couple days you like go for the walk to pray or go to the walk to listen to worship music or whatever, it like feels a little awkward. But day 3 or day 4, when you start doing that same thing, or for me, it's like it's literally a body cue of like hot coffee, cozy chair. This is what I'm here for. And during a really busy season, like there's just something really nice about like your body moving into that more quickly.
Yes.
Mo-
Yes.
Moving into that headspace more quickly because of the physical space.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are thinking of, I don't want to give people too many suggestions because the last thing I ever want to do in these situations is be like, and here's all the things you need to do to make Christmas special, because that is
Right.
absolutely not the point, right? That is the part that I'm trying to get away from. But I do think, are there practical suggestions, um, and a little bit of forethought can help us make the most of those times that we are trying to prepare our hearts to make the most of those times of
Mm-hmm.
at Jesus' feet. So basically the habit of creating place. And is there something you can do to create that space and make that special as well? And then the last thing I wanted to say is, as far as preparing for Christmas, I think that there is something very rich about doing that in community. And again, I almost feel like that is completely opposite of saying, keep your calendar clear, don't do too much. Oh, but also be in community. But it's about balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
and I just think that community makes our relationship with Jesus richer when we do that in community as well.
Yes.
Just for example, I've something I've already put on the calendar for that Sunday, December 1st. Our family of four is going to a concert, but other families from our small group are also going. And I am super excited this year to kick off the Advent season. It's for King and Country, and they're doing like a Christmas tour, and we're going to all go to this concert together. And I think that'll be a lot more fun than going by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it is really tricky because it's never all of one or the other. The goal for Advent is to preparing our hearts to celebrate Christmas. And the main thing that I'm encouraging people to shed are preparations for preparation's sake,
Mm-hmm.
of letting go of the cookies that
Yes.
have to be home baked, right? You know what? No.
Yeah. My friend
um,
Sandy Cooper, every year, she encourages people to write their holiday to don't list.
Oh, I saw it. I got it in my inbox the other day.
Yes, I've been doing that the last several years since she told me about that. And one thing she talks about doing is, she sits down with her family and says,
Mhm.
we've got this menu for Thanksgiving. Let's everybody pick their favorite thing and cross off the other things that nobody cares about, but I've just been making for the last 15 or 20 or 30 years because I have.
Right,
And I mean,
right,
she
right.
has so many great ideas. I'm going to link that holiday to don't
Perfect,
list in this show, but I
perfect.
also am going to make a list of these ideas that you've given because I just think it's so fabulous. I'll put all that in the show notes. And so if somebody's driving and they're like, these are so many good ideas, just check the show notes. I'll write them down.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So, I think we need to close up, and this has been so
Yeah.
wonderful. But in closing, if you would just speak directly to the listener who is wanting their desire, their heart's desire is, I want to embrace Advent, but I'm so afraid because I know how overwhelmed I already feel. What would be your closing words to that listener?
Yeah. Certainly that it is not too late. It is not too late to refocus. Um, if you are feeling overwhelmed, I would suggest, first of all, just to find 5 minutes to sit with God. 5 minutes, whether that's just sitting, and this is, sometimes easier said and done, but just to be still and just be,
Mm-hmm.
to let go of the other things so that you can hear from him, or to spend 5 minutes listening to maybe some Christmas worship. Or, one of my favorite resources is the YouVersion Bible app. There are so many free reading plans, devotionals, short videos on there that can help us redirect. But if somebody is feeling overwhelmed, I would say find a space to set some of that down.
Mm,
And
that's
so that would be number one. And the second, it's come up more than once, and even you mentioned Sandy's to don't list, is it is not too late to look at your to-do list. It is not too late to look at your calendar and take a red pen to it. See what can be cut out. It is not, it's still early, right?
Right.
Middle of November,
Right.
right? And don't feel bad, or maybe take a minute to think about like, why is this so hard for me? But don't feel bad about going back and saying, the idea of like the cooking, like, oh, I said I'd bring something to the bake sale. I can, but it'll be store bought.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or if you already said yes to a party, to go back to somebody and say, you know what? I know I thought I was going to be able to make this, but I'm realizing that that week I really need a little bit of downtime, so I'm not going to be able to come. Um, Maybe it's not sending out Christmas cards this year. This was a huge thing that I gave up when my kids were little. Um, it is so much to get everybody dressed in matchy outfits and make them smile and find the time to take the photo and
Mm-hmm.
edit the photo and create the card and have them all shipped to your house and address all the envelopes and feel stressed out that if they don't go out before. So we let that go years ago. We send Easter cards.
That's
My
nice.
kids' birthdays are January and March. And so February is a really fun time to get a picture that kind of captures where they are at that age. And then I would put together an Easter card. And so, maybe that is the thing you need to let go of this year. But I think that we put a lot of, I don't know how to say, like, we feel a lot of guilt for letting go of some of the preparations we've always done.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of pressure to not only buy the right gifts, but to wrap them beautifully and to be at every event. And like we had said earlier, and this isn't the only stuff going on at the end of the year, right? There
Right.
will be
Right.
birthdays like mine, or business things happening that have to meet year-end deadlines, or busyness in other areas. And so yeah, I feel for you, whoever is feeling that overwhelm, and I just want to give you permission to let some things go
Mm.
so that you can let go of those elaborate preparations and choose to sit at Jesus's feet.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Jen. This was so much fun talking with you, and I feel like it was so inspiring and full of great ideas. So I just want to thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. It was really fun. And the best thing about doing this is it reminds me, oh, it's time to do my brain dump.
Yep. Wow, didn't Jen share so many great ideas with you? I want to encourage you to just think about what is one takeaway? What's one thing that she said that will encourage you this season to draw closer to the heart of Jesus? I hope you'll check out her book, Embracing Advent. It could be a fabulous resource, a way for you to spend time each week focusing on those four gifts of hope, peace, joy, and love. As always, I'll have links to everything that we talked about in the show notes. And if you don't get my weekly podcast update, I would encourage you to sign up for that as well, because all of this will go directly to your inbox. In closing, I want to leave you with this prayer from Romans 15:13. May the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit, you may abound in hope.